Okay, so I think in this draw with me session, I'm just going to practice some horses, particularly just some gesture drawing, and then just kind of put some basic forms on the gesture. I've been trying to practice horses pretty much all year because I was just kind of bad at them. I was pretty, like again, I can just dig up any old reference and just copy from a photo, but I just really wanted to get better at just drawing them from my head and just inventing them in different poses just so that I could have a bit more control over my compositions, essentially. So that's why I thought it was important for me to be able to kind of get a bit better at drawing them from my head and just putting them in different unique poses. I'll give you guys a bit of a glimpse into some of the sketches that I've done of the horses so far. Let's go through the sketchbook. Let's go with this one here. Right, so I think I've already showed you guys this sketch before, but yeah, I don't know. Like with horses, like I was kind of okay at drawing the head. Um, it wasn't really the details that I had a problem with because I think any artist can really draw detail if you give them enough time. But the thing that I was really struggling with was, I guess, animating them and capturing that movement that horses have because horses are just really just such animated creatures, honestly. And I just found that so difficult to capture. So these were a couple of horses that I drew. Again, I drew them from my head. And, if there's any missing information uh, in terms of details and anatomy, then I can just pull out any old reference and just kind of go from there. So, it's not a problem with the details that I had. It was just kind of. Here's another one that I did on this side. It was just the animation I was struggling with. This one I think looked good. I think that one looked fine. But again, it was just very hit and miss. And I decided I really needed to try and get good at drawing horses because I was just taking too long at trying to compose them and put them into poses that I was happy with. So, again, we've got some more here. We've got some sketches of trying to figure out the structure of things. Got a basic anatomy sketch here. And same on this side, just kind of practicing some of the planes and things like that. But man, if there's one thing I struggled with, it was just trying to capture the animation of them. So I decided in today's Draw With Me session, I was going to just try and get better at drawing some horses. Here we go, here's some rough sketches. So here we go. This is kind of where I'm really starting to practice gesture and movement. And I don't know, this one's cool. Bit of a nice movement. This one's nice. Bit basic, but it's nice. Yeah, they're okay. Let's have a look. What else? That's my little Roman thumbnail sheet. I'll show you that one another time. Okay, yeah, here we go. Here's some more movements. That got a very messy on the front legs, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like I was really just not having a good time trying to actually animate them. I was trying to go with a pretty extreme pose here, I guess. Not really sure what I was going for. This was nice. This was kind of where everything started falling into place. So my gestures were getting very they just felt a lot more real, I think. Just started feeling a bit more animated. It's kind of like that Disney way of drawing gestures, where you're really pushing the animation a lot more, and you're kind of exaggerating it. Um, Not that I'm saying this is on the level of Disney artists. I mean, I think those guys are very, very good at what they do. Um, but that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, well, maybe if I try and draw a little more like those guys, where it's slightly cartoony and a little more animated, then maybe um, it will look better, I guess. And yeah, I think that was a good call. Like, I kind of like how this one turned out. So anyway, we're over here now, and I've just drawn some warm-ups. So I was thinking maybe I'll go ahead and record this one, and this will just be mostly a lesson in gesture drawing, because gestures are so hard. They're hard to learn, and I think they are very hard to teach. Let's just jump right in, okay? So I'm just trying to think of a pose. And my brain has gone blank. So I guess I'll just start drawing. We'll see what happens. I'm going to start with the back. I kind of like to start with like the spinal cord. Or, you know, maybe not the spinal cord itself, but just kind of somewhere along the back area. Just kind of grab that curvature, just because I think that's just a good place to start, you know? Because everything is connected to the back. You know, the head and the legs and the tail, they're all connected to the back area. So, or I should say the torso area. So it kind of just makes sense to me to start there. And then we've kind of got a better idea where all the rest of the pieces are going to go. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe similar to this pose, but a little more exaggerated, you know? A little more Disney, I guess. That's how I'm going to describe it. So let's go. I'll start with the front legs. I kind of want the front legs to be higher up. And the back legs to be placed a little lower. So I'm really just trying to make this a lot more extreme. And let's say we've got, well, this is kind of the bit that wraps around the back of the neck, and then I'm just going to drop that into there. Maybe might bring the legs forward a little more. And I might even bring the feet sort of together. I'm kind of thinking that. But that's the reason why gestures are so hard to draw, is because it's all about motion. You know, you're not really thinking about proportion. You're just thinking about the movement, and you're thinking about the movement of how things actually connect into each other, if that makes sense. It's a very abstract concept, and I think this is why I struggled with gestures for a very long time. And it's so hard when you don't even have much of an idea of what it is you want to draw. But, you know, the only cure for that is to just start drawing. So maybe the back leg on this side in the foreground will kind of sort of tuck in and then maybe flick out, kind of like the front feet here. Maybe flicks out to the side. And then I'm just going to kind of draw an arch like this and just kind of do the same thing. Maybe the back leg. I know the knees tend to sort of meet in the middle and then they flare out. So I might exaggerate that movement. Maybe the knee could be there. This is very rough. I'm just thinking about how the torso is gonna. I just like to draw like a curved line that goes all the way towards the rear end like that. And then the neck. This is kind of the thing. It's like, do I want the horse's head to be sort of turned down, or do I want it to be sort of raised? I should have put more thought into the pose, and that's kind of, if you want a successful gesture drawing, I think you've really got to kind of go in with a very strong idea of what you want. I think that's why this one kind of turned out pretty well, because that's what I was envisioning. But this one, I don't know, I'm just kind of just feeling my way through the drawing. And I think gestures, the reason they're so hard to learn and they're so hard to teach people how to do is because I think it's kind of art in its purest form, isn't it? Because there's nothing really technical about this. It's not like anatomy where there's a right and a wrong answer. It's not like architecture or drafting. The thing about gestures is they're extremely dynamic, and there's not really a right or wrong. You can kind of draw these animals in any pose you want. It all just depends on how well you can do it. And hang on, let me just get rid of that. There we go. Yeah, it just kind of depends on how well you can capture that movement. And that's the hard part. So it's not that, if you do have an idea of a pose, I really fucking hate this. I just don't know what I'm doing there. I'm just gonna maybe do something like that. Maybe that looks better. Yeah, like you might have an idea of a pose, which is great, but it's a question of, can you actually capture that pose? Can you do it? Can you do it justice? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of trace my pencil around this neck, come down here, down to that bit, that's that bit there that I'm drawing, so around there, and flick it up to where the muzzle would be, somewhere there. And I'll do the same on the other side, like this would kind of wrap around. So I'm drawing the horse as if it's kind of facing away from the viewer, like its face is sort of tucked behind the neck. Not that you can really see that right now. Doesn't make much sense. It's a very abstract concept, this whole sketch at the moment. But hopefully you can kind of see what I'm going for. And you will have noticed when I was drawing this part, right? I started back here. Like I kind of traced my steps and I just kind of went, okay, let me come back here. Around here, around there. And I think, and this is just my opinion, so, you don't have to agree with this, but I think if you do that, let's say you want to draw this part of the head, right? I think if you go back a few steps, like all the way back here and trace the line, you'll get a much better curve. Because, like I said before, a gesture drawing is not something that's technical. It's all about movement. And I think it's really about I think a big part of capturing that movement is to see the bigger picture and to see how all these parts connect into each other, okay? So what I used to do, like if I wasn't happy with this area, for example, I would just keep scratching away like this. You know what I mean? And it would just look terrible. I could just never get that sort of dynamic pose happening. So then, what I started doing recently was, okay, I was like, let me see if I can do this in one line. Let me see if I can go around here, trace my steps, come down. Now I'll draw the form that I want to draw, and then it will curl up, because that just feels like a natural movement from here to there. And then it will curl up back to the top of the head. And, okay, that may not be the most anatomically accurate way of drawing a horse, but I think movement-wise, this is very nice. And I think right now we've got a pretty good basis for adding some detail on top of this. Not that I'm going to go too detailed today because I can't remember all of the anatomy of a horse. I can remember the basic structures, like I can remember these, but anything more detailed than that, I'm definitely going to have to pull out a reference there because, you know, I'm just not going to be able to remember it. Okay, so then, I've got to draw how the neck wedges into this part, so I'm just going to draw an ellipse. That's the thing with gesture drawings. They are very curved. There's really no straight lines. And let's say if you are working from a reference and you're trying to do a gesture drawing, if you do spot a straight line, maybe try to figure out a way to make that curved, just so you can keep that dynamism in the drawing. So obviously, like this is going to be the base of the neck and it's got to attach into the head. So, I mean, I could go, again, trace my steps, follow the curve, and then trail off that and then come into here. Or I could go the other way and see what kind of line I get going the other way there. I mean, the trick is to kind of do it in one line, isn't it? So you can get the drawing done faster. But I think that kind of works. But yeah, the reason I'm taking so long drawing this is because I'm just trying to explain, not that I'm explaining it very well, but I am trying to explain all the decisions that I'm making, because that's what my art teachers never did for me, Like, they would simplify an image like a human being or an animal into a simple gesture drawing, but they would never really explain how they did it. They would never, like, I was watching them do it, but I just didn't understand why they were making the decisions that they were making. So that's why I'm taking ages on this, because I just want to, well, just kind of walk you guys through all the decisions that I'm making. So that maybe gesture drawing makes a little more sense to you, hopefully. Or, maybe I've confused you even more, and hopefully I've not, but, that could be very well the case. So I kind of like this movement that we've got. I'm just going to see if I can maybe push it a little more. Especially like this back leg here. This isn't the best gesture drawing I've done. I think there's probably too many of these smaller curves. Usually with a gesture drawing, you want to focus on the larger curves. You really want to focus on the larger forms, but, Okay, so I'm just going to try and move through this a little quicker because, honestly, just took way too long to draw that, but anyway. So I'm still using a lot of curves. Not worrying about the planes, really. Because I think if I was going to draw the planes, which I'm not going to do that today in this session, but if I was, I'd just do that at a much later stage of the drawing. What I'm really focusing on is, obviously a good gesture and a good animation, but I'm also focusing on creating like a really nice silhouette that I can work with. Because I think that's kind of where a lot of an image sort of comes from. You're trying to design the silhouette in a way that looks good. Okay, so there's always like this sort of webbing that goes from the thigh into the belly like that. I always like to just kind of draw that. I don't actually know the anatomical names of any of those things, so you're more than welcome in the comments to name some of the anatomy if you recognize any of it in this drawing. Not that I'm drawing much of it. This isn't going to be an anatomical diagram, but, you know, if you do manage to pick out certain things, that'd be cool. But yeah, I'm not going to worry about memorizing anatomy, you know. I'm going to worry more about just drawing it at this point anyway. Okay, then we got like these bits here. There's like this bit around the chest that kind of wraps around the front of the chest, kind of cuts through the center. Sort of that nice anatomical detail, which I like to draw. This would be like, there's like a muscle and there's a muscle at the top of the neck, which in this case would kind of come up there and sort of wrap around a little bit from this perspective. And then there's a side one. So, you know, I think the benefit of having a solid gesture is, let me just draw those ears in because I didn't really draw them. Okay, there we go. The benefit of having a solid gesture drawing to work from is, I think it kind of makes the anatomy a little bit easier to draw and a little bit easier to remember, because again, you're not thinking about the anatomy, but you are thinking about how all these different parts and structures move into each other. Now, obviously, yes, you do have to study animal anatomy, which might sound daunting because, you know, we all know how hard human anatomy is. But the good news about animal anatomy I discovered was that horses, canines, and felines, they all have pretty similar pieces. It's hard to explain, but if you start, you know, if you do start learning how to draw animal anatomy, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, they've always kind of got like this sort of muscle, these two muscles at the front of the chest there. They've got like this sort of muscle around here where the neck inserts into the torso. That's kind of a structure that you'll see in there. You know, again, like this webbing. They've actually got quite a lot in common. Yes, they're very different animals, obviously, but the structures tend to be, you will notice patterns. And that's kind of your job as an artist, you know. It's your job to kind of notice patterns so that you can draw these things a lot easier. But yeah, I think horses are brilliant practice for learning how to draw gestures, because like I said earlier, they are so animated. It's like all of their movements are just really beautiful in my mind. So it's like the crease of the mouth there, so we're kind of looking at the head from that perspective. Probably would need a reference for this nose area because that's a little bit tricky. But I will just draw kind of like how this neck inserts to those muscles in there. Okay, look, I think that's probably fine as it is. I think we've got a horse. So this is kind of what I've been practicing. I've been practicing motion, movement, gesture, and structure. Not so much the anatomy, because I think anatomy is kind of more about detail. Yes, I would need to put anatomy on these drawings to make them look a little more believable, but, you know, again, I'm not too worried about that. Like, if I ever get lost, I'll pull up a reference and just fill in the blanks. But what I'm really trying to get good at is trying to move them and make them look interesting and dynamic. And I'm just looking at this part of the neck that looks like it's got a tumor. Oh well. Yeah, just trying to make them feel a lot more alive, because I was really struggling to make my animals look alive. And, you know, I think if you're going to draw animals, you should make them look alive, because they really are lively things. Okay, so maybe I'll do another one here. What are we? 25 minutes in. Alright, let's see if I can do this next one a little faster. I'm going to talk a little bit less now because I really just want to focus on what I'm trying to draw here. So I think this will be the main line of action. So again, I'm just kind of focusing on the back of the horse. This one's going to be hard. Ooh, okay. Just going to see if I can go for like a really dynamic pose. If I fail, I fail. Like, you know, whatever. I'll just try again. I'm not afraid of failure. I used to be such a perfectionist when I was younger. But, you know, I wish I wasn't, because my perfectionism, I think, really cost me a lot of potentially interesting drawings. So I don't let the fear of failure stop me anymore. If I fail, I fail. I'll just do it again, and I'll keep doing it until I get it right. Even if that means I do a really bad drawing on YouTube, doesn't matter. Because I think as artists, we're not defined. We're not defined by our worst sketches. I think we are defined by our best kind of work that we are actually capable of doing. So hopefully you find some reassurance in that. So don't let any critics try and dissuade you from picking up the pencil. It's normal to fail, you know? I think there's this myth of the artistic genius, which I think is really quite damaging, actually, for a lot of artists, because I think a lot of people expect us to be able to do it easily, and then we kind of put that expectation on ourselves that drawing should just come naturally to us. And the truth is, that's not true. Drawing is so hard. It's like, I've worked quite a few hard jobs in my lifetime, and I'll tell you right now, I've been drawing all my life, and it's still the hardest thing I've ever done. Which is why it's so frustrating sometimes, because it's like, I've been doing this all my life. Why am I still making bad drawings? But, you know, the reason you're making bad drawings is because you're forever learning. And even Michelangelo himself said, if people knew how hard it was to learn how to draw, or if people, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but basically his quote was, if people knew how hard it was to draw or how much work went into it, they wouldn't call it genius. Because it's not genius, it's just hard work. So hopefully that encourages you to pick up the pencil and just fail and learn to enjoy failing. And yeah, don't be discouraged if you don't create a masterpiece every single time. Now, one other tip, and you've probably heard this one before, but when you're drawing curves and gestures and things, make sure I know you can't see my arm, but make sure you're moving your arm. Don't fall for these wrist movements. I mean, look, I still make that mistake, but you really want to be moving your arm either from the elbow or the shoulder, because your curvatures will definitely look a lot better. So I know you can't see my hand on the screen, so you just have to kind of take my word for it that I'm trying to use my shoulder and not my hand, at least for this stage. I'll use my wrist when it comes to refining things. So obviously you can draw with your wrist, but that's more detail work, Don't draw detail yet in this gesture stage. Just focus more on the movements of the individual parts and how they all kind of connect into each other. Okay, so I think this is definitely a pose that I need a little more practice with, but I don't hate it. I think I've got the right idea. I just need to practice a little more, that's all. I can't tell. I mean, do I want the ears pointing back or forward? What would look better? Maybe forward. It's a little bit there. Okay, so in the video description, I'm going to link a book that you can read if you want to learn how to draw horses and draw them from imagination and make them look more animated. I will share with you in the video description what book I've actually been reading to do this, because it was actually pretty hard. Like, the sketches were beautiful, but I still wasn't quite getting the movement. But I just kind of practiced. Okay, I'm going to put the eye there. I'm going to sort of dip that bit there. Okay, I'll come back to the face. So yeah, there was a book that I read because I just got so frustrated with my horses looking like crap. And so I did some searching on the internet and I came across a book which I can't remember the name of the author, but I'll link it in the video description. And it kind of helped me out. Again, it was a bit hard to draw the lines the way he was drawing because he was clearly an expert on the anatomy and the gestures and the movements and the proportions. So it was kind of a difficult book, but at the same time still very helpful. And I didn't read through the whole thing because I never really do that. If I'm being honest, I never really finish the books that I read. I just kind of take tidbits of information because there's a lot of things that I want to draw, and I'm not going to remember everything about a single subject because I'm trying to learn how to draw multiple subjects. But I will kind of read a book and just see if any of the information sticks. I'll just kind of have a flick through the pages, see if there's any illustrations in the book that kind of stand out to me, and if there's anything that I feel like I want to practice. Okay, that's kind of... This one will definitely need another sketch to really refine it, but you know what? Not a bad finish. And that's the thing, drawing like this is, these drawings aren't exactly the prettiest. I think this one's nice, but, But I tell you something, they are fun. They are really fun to draw. And that's another reason why I like drawing from imagination so much, is because it just made art fun for me again, kind of like when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I just used to draw from my head all of the time. It didn't matter to me whether it looked good or not. But I don't know, at some point in my adulthood, I decided I wanted to get better at drawing, which I think is good. I think that's a noble enough pursuit, but sometimes you get lost in the rabbit hole of learning and you don't always enjoy it, and then you sometimes forget why you draw in the first place. And I've been there a couple of times, and that's not a fun place to be, because I know why I draw. I draw because I love it. And I draw because I've been doing it all my life. And it's the only thing that really brings me true happiness. So it's not a nice place to be when you're not enjoying the only thing that you really love. It's not really a nice place, but sometimes as artists we end up in that place. But yeah, as I was saying, that's why I love drawing from imagination. Even if my drawings aren't always the best, sometimes they turn out really well. But I love drawing from imagination because it's made drawing so much more fun for me again, rather than relentlessly studying from references. And I think that was the worst part. When I was copying from references and photographs, I never actually improved. I got better at copying, but I never improved as an artist, because an artist should always be bringing their own creations to life, and they should always be bringing their own visions and working towards their own masterpieces. They shouldn't be copying from an image. That's just what I believe. And yeah, that was the worst part of that. I was just never... I'm going to just draw that little chest muscle in there. I don't know what that's called, but just draw that. Okay, well, that was a tricky one, so I've got to work on that. I forgot to finish off this thing. So I will work on this pose. I'll practice this one a little more. But hey, it's alright. I can live with that. But anyway, so there's some gesture drawings. I hope you got some good tips from that one. This is a bit more than a gesture drawing, to be honest. This is like more structural. A gesture is literally just curved lines, but I thought I would just kind of take my time and just explain some of my thought processes, and yeah, hopefully got a few good tips out of that. I'm going to link you that book in the description. because if you want to learn how to draw horses and other animals, that'd be a good resource for you. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.